Bienvenidos. Welcome to our show, Hola y Aloha. We are the voice for the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in Hawaii. My name is Barbara De Lucca, and I'm the president and co-founder, and this is my co-host.
Hello, I'm Marysol Ruiz, co-founder of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here alongside Barbara.
Yes, and she's our vice president. And lovely co-host. So today we have an interesting topic. We're going to be talking about obesity and health issues in the Hispanic community. And we have a guest today. Her name is Dr. Lisa Sanchez-Johnsen, or Dr. Lisa, as she's known in our community. So Dr. Lisa, she's a national leader in the area of Hispanic and Latino health and equity, diversity, and inclusion. She has over 30 years of experience conducting research and clinical work with Hispanics, Latinos, Black, and other ethnic minorities in the area of culturally competent health behavior assessments and interventions. Dr. Lisa, she's also a board member on the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. That's how we met her. And she leads our initiatives in equity, diversity, and inclusion, and health and research. Most recently, she received the Distinguished Professional Career Award from the National Latinx Psychological Association for her career work in research, education, and training, mentorship, and clinical practice focused on Hispanic, Latino health and behavioral medicine and health psychology. Okay, that's a mouthful.
Wow.
So I'm going to just hand it over to Dr. Lisa, and she can tell us a little bit more about her background. And she's joining us today from Chicago. So welcome, Lisa, Dr. Lisa.
Aloha, Barbara and Marysol. It's really good to be here. I'm looking forward to and excited to talk to you today about a couple of different issues that's kind of on my mind. And so I'm excited. I guess, again, thank you for inviting me here today. I guess one of the things I wanted to say about my background is that I'm a local girl, born and raised in Hawaii. I graduated from Maryknoll grade school, Maryknoll High School, went to UH Manoa. Born and bred in Hawaii. And I left Hawaii for graduate school, intending to come back to Hawaii. My main focus was to learn as much as I could in graduate school and then to bring that knowledge back to Hawaii. And my first faculty position was at the University of Manoa at the Cancer Research Center, where I started a lot of this work in this area.
Can you tell us a little bit about your connection to the Hispanic community here in Hawaii?
Sure. Yes. So, in addition to being born and raised in Hawaii, my family heritage, my lineage goes way back into the early 1900s. In the pineapple plantation days, when individuals from Puerto Rico, I'm Puerto Rican and German by descent. So in the early 1900s, when individuals were recruited from Puerto Rico to work on the plantations in Hawaii, that's my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather came to Hawaii at that time. And so come from a long descendants of people that have lived in Hawaii. And actually, my grandmother, Ana Talea Vieira Lopez, was quite known in the Puerto Rican community for being active in the United Puerto Rican Association of Hawaii, as well as my grandparents as well were active members. My grandma was actually known for being the one to pray for everybody and do a lot of rosaries for individuals in the community. And, when I came back after my graduate school training and had a faculty position, I was eager to also become a member of the United Puerto Rican Association of Hawaii. So, some deep roots way back when, and I'm happy to tell you a little bit about the research that we were doing at that time. If that's of interest as well.
Everything you say is of interest, Dr. Lisa.
I love it. Yeah.
So I just have a question because when Barbara was doing and I kind of segue a little bit, and we'll bring you back. But Dr. Lisa, I have just a quick question. I noticed in the introduction that Barbara had mentioned, it said, as far as your accolades, Latinx psychology, Latinx. Can you talk about the use of the word Hispanic or Latino or other words that are used to describe the community, the Latino community is what I actually normally use, but I hear Latinx a lot. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, yeah, great question. In a lot of my trainings and writings, we always mention the use of that word because it can get confusing. Sometimes people use those words interchangeably. Here's how I understand it, and what some of the research shows is that the word Hispanic is actually a made-up term. It was developed, I think, in the 1980 census for the first time to use to describe people of Spanish descent in the United States. So that's not a term that's really used in other countries. You really just find that here in the U.S. So it comes from the word, the Spanish word referring to the Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain. And so the government came up with that word to kind of put us all together. Word Latino is more progressive in a way. Some people say, sometimes you hear that word a little bit more on the West Coast, but it really depends. You might hear it in different pockets of the United States as well. Some people don't like that term because they think it refers mainly to the Roman Empire and the conquest of Spain, I guess, at that time. So some people prefer one term or the other. Now, I should say that the word Latinx, you've probably heard that word more in the last 5 years or so. Professional organizations are kind of moving towards using that term. It's people have kind of strong emotions about any one of those terms in terms of what to use and what not to use. I can tell you that the word Latinx was developed to be a more inclusive term in general. But now the interesting thing, as you know, about the Spanish language is people say that it's a gendered language. So we use the word O to refer to males and A to refer to females. But sometimes, as you know, when you use the word O, it refers to both men and women, right? And so there are some individuals and organizations, groups that felt like it was more of a binary term, like it's only used for women or men. So the X came into play to be a more of a non-binary term, really to promote the inclusivity and the intersectionality. So how Latino-ness may intersect with other aspects of somebody's identity. I would say with that as a background, I would like the viewers to really understand research that came from the Pew Center, which says that about 23% of individuals, only 23% of individuals actually have heard of that word. 23% of Hispanic individuals have actually heard of that word. About 3% you. So I'm just saying that is to get a bit of a context. Now, if you work in academic settings or sometimes, mostly academic settings, you're going to hear that word more. And you might be, people might say something to you if you're not using that word. I can tell you though, from my perspective, I would never go out and tell a patient, of mine, oh, so you're a Latinx patient. I really prefer, and I ask people to really think of and use the words that people prefer to use. So have them to tell you how they would like to be described, right? So in Hawaii, we use the word Hispanic a lot. We have, historically, we had the Hispanic Center of Hawaii. We have our chamber, right? It's Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Hawaii. But there can be some overlap as well. And again, just to be respectful, I say just defer to how a person wants to be identified. And honestly, a lot of Hispanics want to be identified as to what their individual ethnic group is. So I'm Puerto Rican, if you're Mexican, Cuban, that's how they identify themselves. And we just want to respect that as overall.
Yeah, I find that interesting that you said Hispanic was a term that was created by the government, because with the Latinx being a new term being used in the last 5 years and only 3% of us that actually identify with that word, I feel like that's a term that was created by the government as well. But maybe it's more so just for research and to group everybody into one, like you said, it makes more sense and to use it in your setting when you're doing on the Latinx community versus the Latino community. And it depends on what part of the country you come from. I'm from Phoenix, and, for the most part, people identify as Hispanic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, exactly. And it's a hot issue. I know even on listservs, people can say, oh, they raise a question about the use of that word. So you're going to get a lot of feedback about that. I will say that even our professional organization, because I'm a clinical psychologist, that we previously were the National Latino/A Psychological Association. We went through a name change through that. And what I have learned, and really what I encourage people to do, is that if you're going to go through any type of name change, whether it's Hispanics or Latino or whatever, to just make sure you're working with community members, you're working with individuals to get their feedback and solicit that, so everybody feels like they're coming along and agreeing to how you want to be describing yourself. Because I'm sure you want to be in a group where your opinion is valued and you feel like you belong to that group. So you want that label, so to speak, to be representative of you.
Yeah, and I feel like they're interchangeable. So today you're probably going to hear us refer to Latinx or Latino or Hispanic. So with that, can you tell us about some of the health conditions that affect Hispanics?
Yes, sure. Yeah, well, I'll start by the issue that I work with a lot, which is obesity, right? So we know obesity is increasing in the United States overall, right? You see these statistics. It's increasing in Mexico as well as Puerto Rico, many different countries. But the reason why I study obesity is I feel like it's the most prevalent health issue in our community. So overall, in terms of men overall, so I like to break things up according to men and women in terms of the data. About 36.5% of Latinos have obesity, and 42.6% of Latino women have obesity. Now, I should take a step back and just say obesity, right, is takes into account your so it's not just the weight, and it's basically if you have a body mass index of greater than or equal to 30, that's considered you're obese. And you have to just look at if you just Google BMI calculator or BMI chart, you'll be able to see your height on one side and your weight, and then be able to see where you follow. A BMI of 25 or greater is considered overweight, and then again, 30 or greater is obese. What I find interesting is this: when you look at the subgroup differences within obesity, you're going to see how diverse our culture is. So 40.9% of men that are Puerto Rican have obesity versus 27% of South American men have obesity. Similar kind of pattern with women, about 51.4%. If you think about that, it's 50% of the Puerto Rican community is, right? That's a lot, versus the women, and South American women, about 31% or so. So again, demonstrating how important it is to look at those individual differences. You could see the same thing with diabetes. That's another prevalent issue in our community. A lot of times people have both diabetes and obesity. Not always, but you see that. And quite a high rate of women, it's about 17% rate of obesity, and men is about 16.5%. Again, you see those subpopulation differences as well. South Americans tend to be on the lower side for diabetes, about 10%. Puerto Ricans on the higher side. Similar thing with hypertension, that it's kind of about a quarter of our population has hypertension. So about 25% of women and about 26% of men. And I should say that at this point, I should mention that a lot of the statistics that I just said comes from this really big study called the Hispanic Community Health Study of Latinos. It's the SOUL study. So a lot of that data is a nationally represented sample across 4 different cities in the U.S. That's where that data comes from.
Speaking of data, I'm just going to go off topic really quick. I was looking on social media today, and I saw an article by UHERO, that's the University of Hawaii, right? And one of our other board members, Dr. Ruben Juarez, he and his partner, Alika, they have a company called Hawaii Integrated Analytics, and they've done some research that says there's a potential link between intestinal bacteria and the disproportionate higher rates of certain chronic disease and mental health risk among Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders. It's been discovered. So I just find that fascinating. I don't really understand, I can read it and understand what does, but the research behind it, I don't understand. But there is, you guys specialize in multicultural health, and that's fascinating.
And I see, thank you for bringing that up, because this is what I love. I love being a clinical psychologist. And within that, I'm actually a health psychologist. Okay. So what you pointed out was you kind of mentioned something about a health issue, and then also like a mental health issue, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so that's exactly what health psychologists study. We don't just focus on a straight up mental health issue like schizophrenia or bipolar or depression. We're more likely, and this is the way we were trained, to look at different health issues and the mental health issues that kind of go along with it. Or conversely, a mental health issue and a health issue that goes along with it. So in clinical psychology practice, I would be very likely to see somebody that is experiencing stress or anxiety as well as weight issues, and they're trying to lose weight, or somebody that has a heart attack and they're trying to engage in healthier behavior change.
Right.
So, yeah, that's in the realm of health psychology.
That makes sense, because, I might be experiencing obesity because I might have some mental health issues, which is causing me to turn to food for comfort or something like that. Am I understanding you right?
Yeah, and I want to say that even if somebody doesn't have a mental health issue, because I'm all about like destigmatizing all of that. The bottom line is that so many of these health issues have a behavioral component. That is why you can bring in a behavioral health person, like myself, like my colleagues, as clinical psychologists, as social workers. We deal with behavior change. And what is eating? Eating is a behavior. What is smoking? It's a behavior. Sometimes people are having difficulty taking their medication for diabetes or something. You can see a psychologist to help problem solve issues around that, to help you develop healthier behaviors.
Well, speaking of healthier behaviors and obesity, well, can you tell me what you're doing to address the obesity?
Yes. Yeah. So a number of different things. I would say one thing is just in terms of our research. So the type of research that I do, and I started it in Hawaii, and we're going to come back and give some of those findings back to our community. That's the strategic plan anyway. I study cultural variables that are underlying race and ethnicity as it relates to diet, physical activity, and body image. So things like the role of acculturation and ethnic identity, only identified you are Hispanic or not identified, and cultural values like familialism, like religion, that's also a cultural value, anything like that. Also cultural values such as a culturally prescribed way for a man to behave, like I'm sorry,
like machismo, but what is familiaism? That's a new word.
Okay. Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for asking. So, so that is an emphasis on the family. So in general, people say, and you might be familiar with this, that Latinos or Hispanics are very family oriented. And for the most part, that is true. That is a value that a lot of Hispanic individuals have on their family, or familismo, that's what it's called. Again, there's other variables like machismo. It's a culturally prescribed way for a man to behave. I'm sure you've heard of that word. And other, there's also with medianismo. It's a culturally prescribed way for a woman to behave. So, we're studying some of these cultural variables that I think are very impactful for different health issues. And so we have different projects that are going on in terms of those areas.
When you said cultural ways for a woman to behave, it's like almost like the whole family looks at you crazy if you don't get up and serve your man a plate.
There could be some of that. And one of the things that we do is to try to help, if it was in a therapy setting or even in a research setting, we help to help if it's a woman, help her to see, because we don't want to take away anybody's cultural value. If that's their value, that's their value, right? So sometimes we work with them individually or in a group to help them interpret that a little bit differently. So a typical example would be a woman that doesn't want to go to the gym because she thinks, I need to run around and take care of my family, right? And we all can understand that. But if that happens over and over and over again, and then she never gets to the gym or she never gets to cook something healthy for herself, then what happens is that then in her cultural way, she's focusing on her family, but we helped her to also see how taking care of her health is also focusing on her family, because she wants to be there for her family and be healthy and serve as a positive role model.
Makes sense.
And Dr. Lisa, I'm just curious, what motivated you to become a clinical psychologist? And can you tell us, what exactly is that?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll tell you, Marysol, thanks for that question. Yes, so psychology in general is the study of like human behavior, right? And clinical, in a way, you can think of it as applying the scientific study of human behavior to clinical settings. Okay, and so I don't know. I would say for as far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a psychologist. I can remember just being in grade school and people coming up to me, telling me their problems, and being in, I don't know, 5th grade and talking to people, getting in trouble actually in high school for just talking too much to people and trying to solve their problem when probably I should have been focusing on other things. So I just love people, and I think that just came naturally to me to want to talk to people and help them with different issues. And then I guess in the same backdrop, psychologists either can do research, or they can teach, they can see patients, they can consult. And my love for science actually started around the same age in grade school by just entering science fairs, many, like every year, and going to state science fairs. It just really turned me on to what psychology can do in experimental, settings that you can engage in to help individuals in a scientific realm, or also in the practice of psychology. So it's both the science and the practice of psychology.
We just have experience in all areas.
It's fun to be a psychologist. I feel like it's the best job ever. I highly recommend it to people.
You're so cute.
I know, and you knew what you wanted to do from a young age. That's great. And led into this position, which has also, giving you experience in equity, diversity, and inclusion. So that's a new word. I would say not that new. I would say it's probably as new as Latinx, right? So can you tell us a bit about your work in that area?
Oh, yes. Diversity is just appreciating differences and valuing that we want to get different perspectives, whether that's diverse Hispanic backgrounds or religions or age or ability status. That's the work in diversity. And then inclusion is when you help people to feel like they belong to that group, that they're welcomed and respected. And equity, actually, so a lot of times people would think, oh, we just want to treat everybody equally. Well, the problem with that is that we're not all created equally. I can give you an example of myself that, I'm a petite female, and if we're going to all be treated equally, there's a graphic sometimes that shows different risers that people need to stand on to reach a fruit on a tree. And so my riser would need to be higher than most people, right? But if you say we're all equal, everybody the same riser, and that wouldn't work for me. So equity is kind of paying attention to those individual differences to honor and respect those individuals. So I do quite a bit of work in terms of presentations and consulting when it's needed in different organizations and things like that. So that's a part of my work is in that area as well.
And how do you split your time with? How often do you come back to Hawaii? And do you come back as often as you'd like? Like, how do you split your time with mainland and here and work?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, because I find myself in a little bit of a triangle, kind of going between different cities. But I would say as often as I can, and not often as I would like. COVID didn't make it easy to travel, so we just didn't. But I would say, I don't know, at least 4 times a year, 4 or 5 times a year, depending on what's going on in the community, and hopefully more in the future as I get different projects started and able to contribute more. Definitely want to have a presence there, and Hawaii is in my heart. It just never left.
Oh yeah, we're glad that we were able to connect with you on
Yeah,
when you came out to visit and work.
thank
So how does that
you.
work? You're a clinical psychologist. You're licensed in Hawaii, Illinois, and Wisconsin.
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell us more about your multicultural health business?
Sure. Yes. Yes. So it's a clinical psychology practice. I will be starting to see patients. So I had this practice when I was in Hawaii many years ago, and then I'm just getting ready to start up again. But we do consulting as well in terms of this practice, and have different focuses. Generally, health psychology, but also have a specialty in working with men and men's health issues and health professions, and the stress that health professionals experience, and then also in other professions in terms of stress and coping with different situations, and of course eating and weight issues. Do work in bariatric surgery, and then and so that's kind of the scope of multicultural health and wellness.
Well, how can people reach you or hear more about you?
Sure, yeah. So I have phone number, and I can give you that. I think 808-376-6165. And then my email, it's super long, but it makes sense. It's Dr. Lisa. It starts off real good. And then it's at drlisasanchez-johnsen.com. So Dr. Lisa at drlisasanchez-johnsen.com. Okay. Had to buy that domain.
Right? I wonder how many people are fighting for it. And, the name of your business is Multicultural Health and Wellness.
Yes.
Okay. And of course, we'll provide your LinkedIn profile. So yeah, like all kinds of ways to reach you.
Yes. And also mention that my full-time job is really I'm an associate professor and vice chair for research at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. So that's why I'm in Chicago. That's what I do there in the Department of Family and Preventive Medicine. So
what is it that you're researching? I'm sorry, I don't think I caught that.
Oh, sure. It's in the Department of Family and Preventive Medicine. But the similar type of research in obesity, weight, and eating issues in Filipinos and other groups too, in Asians as well.
Oh, well, I mean, speaking of eating issues, how about the opposite spectrum from obesity? People that don't want to eat. They're afraid to gain weight.
Yeah. Yes. And, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it used to be way back when that individuals, researchers, and clinicians didn't really assess or think that eating issues were a problem in our community. They thought it was, just on non-Hispanic whites would have that. But actually, it's similar to, or sometimes slightly higher, depending on which studies you're looking at, of eating disorders. We're talking about anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder.
Wow.
So,
wow,
yeah.
That was so much to cover in so little time. It looks like we're up on our half hour, but
I can't believe it.
Want to add or ask before we close the session? No? Okay. Yeah, we'll have to have you come on the podcast when you're.
Oh yeah, I would love to. We're gonna have to do this again. Got a lot of different issues that we can just really dive deeper in terms of health, mental health, behavioral health, and would love to come back again.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us. Right, with the time difference, it's probably 11 o'clock at night over there.
Nice.
Over here.
Yeah, we'll do this again in person.
Okay.
Absolutely.
To your next visit out here. So this is Hola y Aloha on ThinkTech Hawaii. We've been talking with Dr. Lisa Sanchez-Johnsen. She's a clinical psychologist. Whoops, there's my alarm. I told you guys really. We've been talking to Dr. Lisa Sanchez-Johnsen, clinical psychologist and board certified telehealth professional. And our co-host, Marysol Ruiz, Vice President of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Hawaii. Thank you both for being here today. And thank you to our viewers for watching. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. So please tune in and share with your friends. I'm Barbara DeLuca, President of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And adios y aloha.
Adios.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, Please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.